As a new investor, you may want to know what a full deal looks like start to finish. Knowing these pieces will speed up your ability to analyze deals. Back in the Loan Lounge.
Back in the Loan Lounge.
Glad to see your face.
Glad to see your face.
Yeah.
I know we talk kind of at a high level about how to finance fix and flip deals.
Yeah.
But I was thinking maybe we could just go through kind of a deal in greater detail so that we can really show the numbers and talk about how ARV can really affect the outcome as well.
I feel like we give a ton of little tidbits, but I think we got to get into the nitty gritty for especially our newbies and honestly, even for our experienced investors to kind of see the difference between how an ARV can affect, what that net profit really looks like and getting a better idea as to what terms and conditions traditionally look like.
Mm-hmm.
So let's hit it. So in Columbus, Ohio, I think a normal deal could be something where the purchase price is maybe around $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that in, major metros, are you seeing stuff much cheaper than that? Definitely if you go in the suburbs and in smaller towns, you could probably get something smaller, but $100,000 purchase price. I would say it's tough to flip a property for much less than, in the $30,000 range to really kind of improve that property correctly. So 50 kind of covers our basis, gives you a little bit of cushion for, those unexpected repairs that could pop up, something like that. ARV, that's going to play a factor. So we're going to kind of show a couple different scenarios, one with an ARV of 200, another one with an ARV of 250, and kind of showing the difference in those net profits. Yeah. But in that deal structure, what does a down payment look like for most of our lenders?
Yeah, so I would say if you've got a little bit of experience and decent credit, you're looking at around 10% of the purchase price.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Yeah, because so I mean, on a $100,000 purchase, you're coming up with $10,000 plus closing costs.
Sweet.
And closing costs, I mean, people are like, well, what are closing costs? When we actually sit down and do a deal, we will give you what the closing costs will be. But for your purposes of just trying to do back of the napkin math, let's say $10,000.
Yeah. And I can't say enough. Transparency is huge at LFG, especially with us being a mortgage broker. We want you to know from one lender to the next what those fees are. And they are different. And so we definitely want you to know. But this example is really for you to be able to, be sitting on Investor Lift and going through a deal and feeling confident, okay, does this deal have enough legs to send it over to Adam and get an official quote? And those things, like, it's not like a quote takes 2 to 3 days to get back. No, I mean, we can have quotes I've quoted out things while on the phone with clients and saying, hey, tell me about this deal. So this is definitely something that we can get up front, but back of the napkin, $10,000. Sweet. Yeah. So we got $10,000 in a down payment, $10,000 in closing costs, and we've now taken down the property.
Yeah.
And the anxiety starts. No, I'm kidding. But you now have the property. And let's say, I think a lot of people have questions like, how quick is this, am I going to be able to flip the property? I think it's always a safe bet to say 6 months.
Yeah.
Run your numbers, assuming that you're going to be in this property for 6 months. Now, your term is for 12. So God, I hope you don't have to go all 12 months.
Yeah.
Because that starts to eat into your profit pretty considerably. But 6 is safe. I think anything shorter than that is tough to guarantee because you got a month or 2 or maybe even 3 months in rehab, depending on when your contractor's available to get started, depending on, material getting in, especially because like windows are taking weeks and weeks and weeks to get in. So little things like that. And then we're roughly 30 days on market, 30 days to close. So we think 6 months is a safe bet. So how could our listeners calculate interest?
Yeah, so 12% is a safe number. Most hard money lenders are going to be right around 12%. I would say
it's easy for math.
And it's easy for math because
we're here for easy math.
Easy math is the best math. But you take whatever your loan amount is and take 1% of that. Yeah. And that's your monthly payment if your interest rate is 12%.
Yeah.
So in our scenario, we're buying for 100, we're putting 50 into it, and
we have 10,000 into it. So
10,000 into it for a down payment.
Yep.
So we're at $140,000 or $1,400 a month.
Yep.
So 1,400 times 6 is 8,400.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
so with that, we take all these calculations and we really break it down. So, if you say we're going to sell this thing for $250, one thing that I think too often people don't take into consideration is the fees on the back end of the transaction.
Yep.
So you got to sell this bad boy.
Yep.
And so with that, I personally sometimes do, again, easy math. That's probably the biggest thing to learn in this is how can you quickly look at a transaction and say yes or no. So sometimes I do 10%. Realistically, your seller fees are going to probably be closer to 8. So with a ARV of 250, we're going to have about $20,000 in seller fees. If you don't add that number in, holy moly.
Yeah, that's
Like-
significant because 8% of 250,000, $20,000.
Chunky.
That's chunky.
So you have
And just to clarify, the 8%, what is that 8%?
touche.
Yeah. So it's 6% to your realtors and then 2% for other stuff that
Yeah,
comes up.
transfer taxes, title fees,
fees.
etc.
Yeah.
So recording fees.
Stated taxes, property taxes, things like that.
Depending on what time of the year, those could be less, they could be more. These are numbers that you can get from your realtor. You can get from a title rep. They're not made up. They can be determined very easily. Actually, if you go to any title company's website, you can actually produce a net to seller pretty quick and easily. So if that's something that you would like to have a firm number on, they can definitely get that to you. So 250 ARV, we got our 20K in seller fees. We have the total project is costing $150,000. We got that number of 10K for closing costs to take down the property. We have $8,400 in interest payments. And so where does that bring our net profit on this?
Grand total would be $61,600.
Bing, bing, bing.
Yeah.
That's a winner.
That's a winner.
That's a winner all day long.
Yeah.
Now, just so we're all aware, we started this ARV at 200 and we did modify it. And the reason we modified it is I think so if the ARV was 200, our net to our flipper was around 15K, right?
Yes, okay,
and
yeah.
so it's not that so to kind of explain the transparency, I think we have some investors that would take down that deal still and
Yeah.
make 15K. I think we have a lot of other investors that would say, I don't know if that's really a deal. And let's kind of get into the weeds of that. So the reason we based that number originally off of 200 is because a lot of our lenders will go up to a maximum lending amount of 75% of the after repaired value, which this deal kind of hit that matrix.
Yeah.
And a lot of our investors are kind of maxing out these deals at those numbers. But do you really want to make
No.
that little net?
No. And I mean, some of our lenders, they will max out at 65% LTV, LTARV. And I kind of welcome that because, man, I feel like the common thread that I see, especially with investors that have done less than, let's say, 10 flips in the last 2 years, is they have a deal that goes really well and they're like, I'm a genius.
Yeah.
Great. Let's just line them up and knock them down.
Yeah.
And they start overextending themselves because they get the fever,
The FIFA!
which we've talked about before. And if you got the fever, then chances are your math is going to suck. So you need to really, really, really take into account all the possible costs that could happen. And maybe that 75% LTARV isn't the deal.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a ton about figuring out what a good deal looks like for you, and so I can't say that enough. This actually breaks this down considerably. Of is a good deal 15K or is a good deal 60K? Either technically in our eyes is workable.
Yeah.
But is it workable for you? And you definitely have to keep the emotion out of these transactions.
Yeah.
These are business decisions that you're making. Be mindful of that. We're not playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
Though I love a good game of Monopoly, but we're not playing Monopoly. So be mindful of what you're getting into, run your numbers, get into it, or contact us for terms and conditions.
I do have to tell you a joke about Monopoly. This is a joke from my mother, Renita.
Renita, bring it in.
Hey, so I was telling them about a hotel that I was financing, and I was explaining
gosh.
like
I know where you're going.
I said, you know, a lot of people don't know how to finance a hotel. And she said, "Oh, I know how." I'm like, "How do you finance a hotel?" She's like, "You just trade in 4 green houses." Renita Messmer.
Oh, mama. We'll bring her in next time.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, let's get to the next deal.